Hey, what's going on? Dharma Guy here, ready for Dharma Time. Sorry, there's all sorts of fun stuff happening all the time here. As we were waiting for all this to happen, my live feed is going out on my phone currently for Facebook Live. I banged my knee on the table, which apparently cut myself open. That's always fun. So, welcome to 2018, everybody. so, uh, anyways, welcome to Dharma Time. Once again, I am Dharma Guy. First show of the season, first show of the year. I don't know if we want to call it season or not. It's 2018. Feels like just like 9 days ago. It's 2017. But I'll be here all week. So a couple things. Let me get started. First of all, I have to say here in Florida, being the fact that I'm a Montana boy, I have to say I love. Have I mentioned that I love this cold weather we've been having? Fantastic, man. I love it. Matter of fact, I think we had snow a couple times. There was like some flurries apparently in certain areas of the state. Obviously not my area, but hey, I'll take it. It was very cool. And I think we're getting ready to have another cold front coming up this weekend. So for those of you like me, look forward to it. And for those of you like my wife, get a blanket because it's going to get cold. Some housekeeping here. Let's say thank you to our sponsors so we can kind of keep the lights on and keep things going. First one is Retreat Premier Addiction Treatment Centers. Fantastic place. Matter of fact, I'm going to discuss here in a couple minutes once we get into what we're going to discuss today. One of their guys, Tom actually posted something on his Facebook that kind of spoke to me, which I'll mention later on. But to me, that just reaffirms the idea that we picked a right place, man, for our sponsorship and for somebody that we support and whatnot, because it just seems that somebody as high up as he is that is involved in decision making has a good mentality and a good mindset. It really does. And then not to be outdone, we have Journey Pure, awesome, fantastic group. Matter of fact, I'm not sure, not 100% positive, but I do believe on the other show, the Couch Live on Fridays, I believe we're going to be on live on campus again at UCF, and I believe a representative from Journey Pure is going to be there with us, so that should be cool. And I think my producer's getting ready to chime in and agree to that or not.
No, I was just going to say you're absolutely correct. John Shooter will be there, but so will Graham Barrett from Journey Pure. So both of our main sponsors will be
cool. I did not know that.
The Couch Live event.
Look, you guys are learning as I'm learning. That's awesome. I walked in on that conversation, so I'll be filled in, I'm sure, after this show. And then, of course, the Not Matters More Foundation, which should be a cool year for us. I also found out this morning that our golf tournament has been switched from the March 12th to March 19th. So if you're here in Orlando, by all means, come by, check it out. It's a fantastic golf tournament. Every year, everybody has fun. Technically speaking, I believe it's closer to Lake Mary than it is to Orlando. But for those of you who live here, you know it's all relatively close. Awesome golf tournament every year. Last year, we actually were able to give out, 109 doses, I believe, of Narcan. Really cool moment. And actually, I had my, I'm gonna boast here for just a second. Let me take a minute out to say that I got my 90 seconds of fame for that. So we had Fox 35 come out to our golf tournament, and it was kind of a big deal that we were handing out 109 doses of Narcan, which is a life-saving product, I guess. But it was myself, Mr. Dope Doctor over here, Louis Delgado, who's a Mr. Fox 35, if you all don't know, locally. And he's a celebrity. I'm just thankful that he lets me hang out with him sometimes. And then, of course, we had Darryl Strawberry, 4-time World Series champ. They interviewed all three of us afterwards to get our thoughts on the tournament and the Narcan and whatnot. And so we all kind of went home and checked out the news story to see what they aired about it and everything else. And I beat out both of them. Just want to put that out there. Got my 90 seconds of fame. And just so you know, yes, I have it on my DVR. And every time my wife wants to start saying something, I just press play. Like, I'm sorry. Look at that. You got a celebrity in the house. So, anyways, I digress. So we do have Not Matters More is another sponsor of the show. I, which am the president, and our producer / the Dope Doctor is also the founder. NotMattersMore.org if you want to know more about what we do, or if you would like to donate, we would greatly appreciate it, and it goes to good use. And then, of course, last but not least, we have Orange County. Orange County is our local government here, and they're just simply awesome. Him and I are both on the Orange County Drug Free Coalition. We were also on the Heroin Task Force, and it's just a group of good people who really know what they're doing, who really have a good heart and want to help. And they support us 100%, man. Fantastic people. So What else is on my list here? And for those of you who don't know me, this is new for me. I've got lists now. I'm trying to stay organized this year, although I don't think it's going to happen because I'm pretty positive I'm getting ready to go off the list here in a minute. But I do want to go next on the list here. It says discuss Christmas and New Year. So I'm gonna go ahead and discuss Christmas and New Year. So for Happy New Year for everybody who's listening. I hope everybody had a good Christmas and a good New Year. It's always an interesting time. The shows leading up to that one, we're kind of just introducing everybody to the ideas of spirituality, enlightenment, and happiness, things of that nature, which is sometimes counterintuitive when it comes to that time of the year. But hopefully we all made it through it. Hopefully we had a good time. I know I did. It's always fun. I have 4 kids at the house from varying ages, and it's always fun to see the kids enjoying themselves, especially the little ones. I don't know if part of me says it was a great decision. The other one says it might be a mistake. We ended up getting a trampoline, and I don't think you even knew this yet, Mr. Producer over here. I got a trampoline for my kids this year, and part of me says it was the greatest decision I made ever because they go out for hours on end and jumping around and just wearing themselves out. And when they come in, they're all tired, and they go to bed. It's a fantastic investment. I definitely like it. The other side of me says, who's going to be the first one to break an arm? So we're still kind of holding off on that one. My bet is going to be my son, Trinity Jr. He's that kid. Pretty sure he's going to end up being the first one to break an arm or something. I'll keep you updated on that for sure. Having said that, it is a new year, and I was all set to, let's see, the next one is, refresh the truce. So I was all set to talk about the Eightfold Path a little bit and talk about right understanding, dependent origination, so on and so forth. And I'm not going to do that today. I think I'm going to switch gears a little bit, only because there's been some things happening that I think everybody can relate to, and I don't know. I think I'm going to go that direction. And so I do want to first rehash what we've already talked about thus far. For those of you who are new, just now tuning in, or just need a refresher, what I've already tried to get everybody to understand is first and foremost, in life we have to understand that things aren't going to go our way. Pain is a part of it. A lot of people seem to have a hard time kind of accepting that fact, or at least listening to it, whatever. The second thing we have to understand is we cause our own suffering through our aversion to the bad and our clinging to the good. Basically wanting life to be awesome and great 24/7 and not wanting to experience anything that we don't like ever and trying to push it all away causes us to suffer at our inability to do so, essentially. Third one is there is a way, right? There is a way to not suffer. It is possible, which to me is still the most amazing thing I've ever heard in my life. And of course, the fourth one would be the way, and that's how do we do this? The Eightfold Path, which is what I was gung-ho to talk about today. But I just feel compelled to discuss other matters. And so the other matters are, as everybody else does, I go through life and I have ups and downs. I have good things, bad things, or things that don't fit within my box, if you will, things that I want to happen. We all go through them, and some things are easier to deal with than others, for sure. And I will say that for those of you who know me or on my Facebook or even have listened to the Couch Live recently, what have you, I've mentioned a few times, and maybe even this podcast or this show, I've mentioned a few times as well that I've dealt with some medical concerns and issues lately, and it seems to be all coming to a head lately, right? And the problem with that is, for those of you who don't know anything about my story, I'm a large human being, and I've been kind of physical my whole life. I've been that guy who kind of just does what he wants to do physically. Played football, throwing weights around, whatever. I never met a physical challenge that I couldn't overcome or beat, essentially. And so, of course, the one thing that would probably affect me more than anything else is attacking that area of my life. And we all have that. We all have, that one thing that we rely on more than other, that one thing that means more to us. Some people it's your family. Some people it's your physical prowess. Some people it's your intellect. For some people it's your material possessions. Who knows? But essentially that one area essentially that would hurt more than anything else if they took it from you. We all have that. And for me, it was my physicality. My physicality was the one thing that kind of I've relied on over the years. And having that taken away from me lately, it's been rough. It's been a hard time. and I wasn't necessarily going to have this show today, but I came in and was talking to the producer here, and we were just chatting, and we decided it was a good idea to at least talk about it, only because we think that there's a lot of people out there who could potentially be going through similar situations, maybe not the exact, but similar concepts in the sense of struggling with life a little bit and trying to figure out ways of handling it in a way that doesn't cause more pain and suffering that's already there. And I have to say that the stuff that I've been dealing with, had I not had spirituality in my life, if I not kind of changed my perspective and my way of thinking, changed my value system a little bit, I for sure would have handled things a heck of a lot and more unskillfully than I have lately. Caused way too many problems, all around. So I digress. To continue on with it, essentially, where I'm at currently is there were some medical concerns going on that have affected my health drastically. They've affected my day-to-day routine, kind of made life very miserable, if you will, on a day-to-day basis. It affects my mood. It affected my my metabolism, my weight. Has affected just essentially everything you can think of. It's affected in a negative fashion. So I went to the doctor. My original doctor, he kind of gave me some sort of a diagnosis. I listened to it. I was like, okay, great. Let's do what we got to do. Then slowly, if you think of a sweater and you think that little thread and it starts to kind of be pulled a little bit, much in the same way of everybody's life, right? One thing starts to happen and you start to try to deal with that. Next thing you know, a whole laundry list of other things like a domino effect starts to take place. Let's say, you wake up late. And that's the first one. And then all of a sudden you start to realize, oh, I woke up late, but now I try to go make toast and my toaster's broken. And then you get in the car, and then your car won't start. And then so it's just a series of events. And then you start to kind of find yourself in a situation where you're like, oh my God, what else can happen now? So for me, the starting of that was all the physical things I was going through. Doctor kind of gave me an answer, what we thought was the answer at the time. Gave me some recommendations, made a diagnosis, so on and so forth. I started to follow his plan, and then I started to do some research because this particular area I didn't know a whole lot about. So I did some research, started educating myself, and lo and behold, I started to realize maybe my doctor wasn't exactly as informed as I would have liked for him to be. Now, granted, I'll say that he's a general practitioner. This isn't his particular scope of practice, if you will. So I give him a little bit of pass on that one. However, it's still my health, right? And it was still not really devastating to this point, but it was still a very frustrating and difficult thing to realize that this person you put your care into has let you down in a sense, meaning they haven't set you up to succeed per se. So I decided, okay, I'm going to go ahead and deal with this problem by finding somebody else who is maybe a little bit more qualified and can kind of help me pull this out. So I did my best to address the problem. I'm still trying to handle things skillfully. I'm not kind of flipping out about it. I'm not getting upset, although it would have been very easy for me to do. There was a time in my life I would have done that. So instead, I decided to go ahead and find somebody else. So I found an individual that I thought would solve the issue and kind of understand what's going on. Speaking to them prior to, they gave me every indication they knew what was going on. They would handle this no problem. So met with them, had what I felt to be a pretty decent discussion. And I'm going to stop there for a minute and say that, I didn't know what I didn't know, right? So it's very easy to be told, hey, you need to ask more questions, this, that, and so forth. However, being the fact that I've never dealt with any of this before, I didn't know what questions to ask. And so that's a very frustrating thing as well, because you start to feel almost inadequate. Like, what could I have done differently? And you start to own it, essentially. Like, maybe I caused some of this by my inability to know the future for the most part, right? So didn't ask apparently the right questions. I thought I had everything kind of understood. And then some issues started to take place that weren't standard. They weren't normal reactions to some of the medication that was being taken. I reached out, and I didn't feel as if I was being, at the time, I was getting responses that were kind of less than desirable, if you will. So anyways, I made a couple suggestions. I thought I was doing the right things. I started saying, hey, this is what I'm concerned about. This is what I'm seeing. Please help me. And their responses were kind of non-helpful. We'll just leave it at that. And And the reason why I bring this up today is because yesterday I got some blood work back, and I came to the realization that basically I was right for the most part, and the last probably 2 months have been very difficult to get through, and it could have all been prevented had this individual listened to me or heeded my concerns, if you will, or acted on them in some sort of a way. And so yesterday was a very difficult day for me. It was very hard to stay skillful, but that's why I want to talk about it today, because I think we can all relate to this. It's a very applicable thing. It's one thing to sit here and talk about spirituality. It's one thing to talk about, the right this and the right that, what we need to do, finding enlightenment and happiness and all this other stuff. It's another thing to practice it, and oftentimes, being the fact that I teach this and I teach it to a lot of people, and people look to me sometimes and forget that I'm still human. I still deal with it, and so the number one lesson I'm going to start off by saying is don't embark on this journey to find happiness, enlightenment, whatever it may be, a more spiritual lifestyle, with the expectation that once you commit to that, everything's perfect and awesome and everything works. Anything less than that is a failure or your fault or the thing doesn't work or whatever it may be. Because that couldn't be further from the truth. That just means it's working. Because if you listen and you remember from the first truth, pain is a part of life, meaning it's never going to go away. No matter how much you change your perspective, your mindset, whatever it may be, things are going to always happen that you don't care for and you don't like, and some things are going to be easier to deal with than others. In other words, yesterday my kid didn't change the trash on time. That was frustrating, but that's a very easy thing to deal with. You just change it, or you have them change it, whatever it may be. Finding out that your doctor might misdiagnose you, and your life has been very, very difficult for the past month and a half, and it all could have been prevented, is a much harder thing to approach in a skillful way. It really, truly is, and I'll tell you, I can attest to it myself. But that's where the most important ones come into play, man. That's how you know where you're at on your journey, when you start to kind of see some of these more difficult things come up and you handle them skillfully. So for me, finding this information out, I went through a series of emotions, man. I really did. I found the information out. Part of me was relieved because I got an answer finally. And it was, of course, the egotistical part of me was very thankful that I told you so. I had that moment. But then the other part of me was full of rage and anger. And that rage and anger is why? Why am I going through this? Why did this person not listen to me? Why did we have to be here? And I think that we can all relate to that in a sense of there's been situations in all of our lives when a situation takes place and we start to fill in a narrative. We start to think to ourselves, why? Why did this person do this? Why did I do that? Why does this have to happen? And I think that's where the danger first starts to come into play. That's our first, our first willful, unskillful act, if you will. Meaning that was the first moment that we have we can kind of rethink things a little bit and change our perspective. And I know for me, there used to be a time in my life where using this situation, I would have filled in a narrative about, hey, this doctor, I must have pissed him off somehow. Why is he doing this to me? Or this guy really doesn't know what he's doing. Or, he's just a jerk, or, whatever. Obviously, I would use much different phrasing than that. But my point being, I would have filled in that narrative and I would have ran with it. And the problem, and I've learned this by doing tons of different groups and stuff in the addiction world and everything, but I think it bears repeating for everybody, and that is feelings aren't facts. Just because I feel wronged, just because I feel that this person was inadequate in caring for me or negligent or upset or whatever it may be, doesn't necessarily mean that's a fact. And so for me, on my spiritual journey, that's one of the first things that I have to do if I want to keep my happiness and keep my my peace, if you will, right? Because peace is the most important part for me. So if I want to keep that peace, I need to make sure I approach this and saying, okay, while I feel these things, and that's okay, it doesn't mean that it's true, and it doesn't mean I need to act on it at the moment. And so part of my technique, if you will, my skill set, in not acting on that, is venting. Is venting. I think it's important that we have to vent. And I think that's another misconception a lot of times people have who don't know this particular path or spirituality. I'm specifically referring to the Buddhist path, but even if you have another spiritual perspective or another religious faith or whatever it may be, whatever your particular higher power is, I think that for those people on the outside looking in, their expectation is that you're going to always be this wonderful, loving, awesome person who never gets mad or upset or whatever it may be. And that couldn't be further from the truth. So even as a Buddhist, I still get angry. I still get upset, and that's okay. But for me, it's not okay to take it to that next level. It's not okay to then let it consume me. It's not okay for me then to take it out on everybody around me and create even more suffering for myself and everybody else. And so part of the way I do that is, number one, having that mindset of stopping myself and realizing, being self-aware and saying, hold up, something's happening. I'm getting upset at the moment, and I can already feel myself. I'm being mindful of how my mind is trying to tell me that this person's doing this because of this and trying to automatically fill in their motives. And at the end of the day, let's just be honest with each other. Is it likely that this person has malintent towards me? No, it's not possible. I don't even know this dude. I've never hung out with him. We don't share families or friends together. I don't think anybody goes and takes the Hippocratic Oath to help people, with their fingers crossed behind their back, saying, "No, I'm really going to." I don't think anybody does that. I don't think he woke up every morning and said, "Man, I can't wait till that Trinity guy comes in so I can screw up all of his stuff." I don't think that's how it happened. But it's very, very easy for my brain to tell me that's the case and start to fill in that narrative. So much in the same way, if we have a spouse, a friend, a coworker who maybe comes in and gets upset with us or says something we don't like or behaves in a way that just irritates us, it's very easy for us then to start saying, like, "Man, this person has it out for me," or "This person, this, that, and the other." Like, it's very easy to fill in that narrative. And then it takes on a whole life of its own. It gets way carried away. And then the problem is we start to convince ourselves that that's the truth. And we start to build more narrative around that narrative to support it, to justify why we're so angry and so upset. And then we start recruiting people around us to agree with us and say, "Yeah, you're right." And then it just gets way out of hand. And next thing you know, nothing's been fixed and you're more upset than ever and everybody around you is miserable. All because we approached it in an unskillful fashion. And that could have very easily been me. So one of the ways I tried to negate that process, if you will, one of the tools I use is I vent, right? And I'm huge on venting. I'm huge on letting things out. You have to kind of to get it out in words. But the key to that, though, is you have to know when to vent and who to vent to. And I think that's a huge problem in myself and the dope doctor here, where we're talking about prior to going on air now, that's a huge thing for people who might not have the skill set to do that appropriately or never been told. So let me be the first to tell you, if you've never been told, you have to know who to vent to and when to do it and what to say and whatnot. So I think we all have people in our lives, hopefully, that we can vent to. We might not think that we do, but I think a lot of people do have them. And the difference, though, is there's certain people you can vent certain things to. So, for instance, yesterday, when I was very, very upset, I made a point of venting to a very small circle of a select group of people. And I chose those people because I knew ahead of time what their responses were probably going to be. Very supportive, very understanding, listen more than they talk, and it was going to allow me to just spew out of the mouth. They weren't going to take anything that I said with too much weight. They were just going to let me get it out. They know me well enough to realize that I'm just having an unskillful moment. I'm venting, I'm getting it out. And what that did for me was it allowed me to just verbalize and get out some of that stuff that was irritating me. On the flip side of that, there's other individuals in my life that I purposely did not go to vent. Not because I don't value their opinion, not because they don't mean something to me, and not because I don't think they're capable of listening, but because I know their style and I know what that could potentially do. So, for instance, if you have somebody in your life that is close to you, but that person is really close to you, and maybe they're a helper, or maybe they're not particularly skilled at certain listening styles, if you will. You have to be self-aware enough to know what you need. So for me, I didn't need a fixer. I didn't need somebody who was going to try to give me a ton of advice, or somebody who's going to contradict me, somebody who's going to try to play devil's advocate, somebody who's going to try to solve my problem for me. What I needed was simply somebody that can be like, "Let it out, let me hear. Oh my gosh, you're right, that's crazy. I told you that." Just somebody who can kind of relate to it and allow it to happen. Because if I would have gone to the wrong person, if I would have gone to the person who was going to try to fix it, or for the person who's going to try to, give me the devil's advocate approach, or to try to calm me down, or whatever it may be, it would have backfired. Because what would end up happening was, granted, that person's intent might have been to help or to support or to provide solace or whatever it is, I would have interpreted as, why are you going against me? Why are you contradicting me? Why are you taking this person's side? Or you don't get me. Or this is why I don't come to you. You don't ever listen to me. That kind of stuff. It would have been very easy for me to turn it to that, and then that would have created conflict between me and that person, because all I would have done at that point is add them into it and say, and there's another one, you too, kind of a thing. And I'm sure we're all guilty of it, right? We're all guilty of, maybe we feel a certain kind of way and we're upset and we're venting out to maybe the wrong people and we don't realize it. And then that person is just doing their, because you got to remember, this person's got their own life. They got their own problems. They got their own situations. You brought it to them. They care about you in some kind of way, and they do their best to support you the only way they know how. But unbeknownst to them, that's not what you needed at the time. And for me, that's kind of on you to be self-aware enough to know what exactly it is you need. You got to be honest with yourself and say, what do I need at the moment? And knowing who you can go to for what. So for me, that was part of my process, part of my spirituality, if you will, is to be self-aware enough to know I'm feeling feelings of anger right now, feelings of rage, to be honest with you. And I know that in order for me to maintain my peace, I can't hold on to this. I've got to get rid of this somehow, some way. And so the next step for me is, all right, well, who can I go to? Who do I know that's going to give me what I need? Well, what do I need? Well, I need somebody who's just going to listen and let me get it out. So I made a little mental list in my head of the people I know that are capable of providing that sort of a sounding board. And I called them up. And then later on, when I came across individuals who their approach is different than what I needed at that moment, I was able to approach them in a more loving and connective kind of a way, because I already got some of it out earlier. And I didn't depend on them to, quote unquote, fix the situation as much. And so therefore, I didn't create any more conflict later on. And I say all this as if it's really easy to do, but let me tell you, had this situation occurred even as simple as, I don't know, 8-9 years ago, I go, damn, it's a long time now. Wow. I was going to say 5, but then I realized it wouldn't have been 5. So, over 10 years ago, I guess, at this point. But regardless, had it been that long ago, y'all would have probably read about me on the news, because I would have done some stuff that probably would have got me arrested and made the national news, because I would have been so angry and so rageful, and I would have been so just fixated on my own perspective and so fixated on my own narrative, my own story of why this person did this and how could this happen, and this isn't fair, this isn't right, and it shouldn't be happening, and that's all I would have focused on. And while I might have been, quote unquote, right, it wouldn't have led to any real happiness or peace. And that's why I always say, people, you can be right or you can be happy. And while I might be right, and don't get me wrong, I meet with this person later on this week, and we're going to have ourselves a discussion to where I'm going to give them the opportunity to explain their perspective and why they did what they did. And even then, I'm not going to explode like there's a part of me that wants to. Instead, because my peace is important to me, I'm going to choose to handle it in a way that's going to bring me peace and resolution. I'm going to respond rather than react. So, whereas in my life I was always more of a reactor, I'm trying to be a responder now. So my reaction was to now vent to the people I know, and they understood that, which would enable me to then respond. So come later on this week, when I'm able to interact with this individual who I feel was negligent, if you will, I will be able to hopefully interact with that individual in a more civil manner that brings peace and a workable resolution for both of us. Now, does that mean I agree with what this individual did? Does that mean that I'm not still upset? Of course not. I'm definitely upset. But at the end of the day, I want to choose happiness. I want to choose peace. So for all of us, for instance, every single day we're going to come across stuff that irritates us, that upsets us. It's our choice on how we interact with that. We can cause more suffering, or we can choose happiness. I personally want happiness. I don't care about being right. Right's not gotten me anything but more trouble and more irritation, and it's exhausting. So for me, that's how I've been trying to apply my spirituality. That's a practical way, and it's still going on a daily basis. Even as talking to you now, I mean, I'm puffy. I'm not feeling well, but it is what it is. I think that people need to hear it, which is why I'm putting it out there, because hopefully there's somebody out there right now who's dealing with a very similar situation, whether it be a medical one, whether it be a spousal one, whether it be family, business, friends, whatever it may be. Whatever you're dealing with at the moment, you have the ability to choose to be happy. I don't care how bad it is. I don't care how mediocre it is. I don't care what everybody around you is trying to tell you. At the end of the day, you have your own choice. And that's where, at the end of the day, guys, to be honest with you, that's what spirituality really is. It's just, I want to find peace. I'm not going to give you all the answers to the world. I'm not going to help you with your afterlife. That's whatever religious faith that you're in. My only job right now, as I see it, is to give you the tools to where you don't suffer every day. Or you can find some form of enlightenment. Enlightenment meaning, I see it for what it is and I understand it. And I choose happiness as opposed to choosing suffering. And so for me, that's kind of what motivates me every day is the peace that I have feels so fantastic. And talking to me today is much, much different than if you would have seen me yesterday. Not to say that I was out there as a tyrant yesterday, but I was in my vent mode yesterday. I was in my response or my reactionary yesterday to the situation. So, and I see it all the time, right? One of the things I was going to talk about today, and I still kind of will fit it in somehow. There's a show that my wife and I were watching over our little break here. She was off from work and stuff for the holidays. We obviously weren't doing shows. And so we spent a lot of time at the house, and we were trying to watch some TV and chill out and relax. And we watch a lot of shows that aren't necessarily appropriate for my little ones. So we had to try to watch some shows that were more appropriate. So we had like a marathon, if you will, of the show. And the name of the show sounds inappropriate too, I guess, but it's Naked and Afraid, right? Naked and Afraid, for those of you who don't know, it's a show, I think it's on Discovery Channel. But it's a show essentially where they take two people, man and woman, and they strip them naked and blur everything out, of course, and they put them in the survival, and they're supposed to survive there for 21 days. The concept, from what I read it, is essentially if we strip you down from everything, can you survive? Can you make it? Can you build teamwork and things of that nature? And it's a very interesting show because the premise, once again, they show up, two complete strangers don't know each other. They show up to some crazy, obscure, unnecessarily dangerous place, and they strip down butt naked. They go meet another perfect stranger who's also stripped down butt naked. They have this very weird, awkward moment where they meet one another and they try not to look at each other's junk, even though they always do if you look at the replay. Then they put their little satchel on, and then they embark on their journey to get to their, I would call it a campsite, but it doesn't resemble camping in my eyes. But they go to their spot and they start their hopefully 21-day journey of surviving. Now during this 21 days, you have two completely different people from two completely different backgrounds who all have two completely different ideas on how to make this whole situation workable. And at any given point in this 21 days, you can tap out. And if you tap out, it means you go home, no questions asked, and your partner can either stay or they can go. So if you're tapping out and your partner isn't, you're essentially abandoning your partner. And then the reason why I bring all this up is because after watching, it had to be like 30 episodes over the last week or so, I kept noticing a really common theme through a lot of them. Even though they were different people, different environments, and different everything else, the overall feel, vibe, and theme was all the exact same. Every single one of them, at some point or another, had to accept the situation as it is before they could move forward. They would get upset at one another. They would start barking and yelling and screaming and fighting with each other. And inevitably, what would end up happening is the ones who couldn't get over that, the ones who couldn't skillfully handle the situation, the ones who couldn't accept this is what it is, we need to survive, would leave. They would fail, they would leave, and they would learn essentially nothing from their trip there other than how wrong this person was. However, there was a good majority of them, though, that at some point, what they did was they were sitting around, they're hungry, it's raining a lot of times, their shelter sucks for the most part, there's danger around them, they don't get along with their partner, and after a few days of kind of bickering and passive aggressiveness towards each other and just overall just crappiness, one or both of them eventually comes to the conclusion when they have a little one-on-one with the camera, their little diary thing, and they say to themselves or to the people listening, hey, it is what it is. This isn't really who I am. I can't believe I'm acting this way. It's not changing anything. It's not getting any better. This is my teammate. I might as well learn to get along with him to make it out of here. And that is the moment right there that is like a major epiphany. It's so spiritual that I don't know if they even get it while they're in the middle of it. And I sincerely hope each one of them, when they leave, take it with them through life as opposed to just in that situation. Because the only difference after that was their mindset. They were still, the things around them were still just as miserable. It was still just as hot. It was still just as rainy. They were still just as hungry. Their partner may or may not have still been as disagreeable, but they were okay with it. Their attitude completely changed. And it wasn't the situation. It wasn't the outside stuff. It was inside. It was their mindset. It was their desire to stop. I don't want to feel this way anymore, so I'm just simply going to not feel this way anymore. And that, my friends, is life. With the situation that I'm currently dealing with, and everybody who's watching this is currently dealing with, because whether it's as medical as mine or not, or whatever, to you it's paramount. To you, you're right now who's listening to this. You've got something in your life, I guarantee you right now, that's just bothering you, that's causing you, angst, that's whatever, and you're struggling with it potentially. And that's the thing, is you can choose to be happy. You can choose to say, you know what, yeah, this sucks, and it's always gonna suck, but I'm not gonna let it bring me down. And the show was amazing in how it covered this, because what would happen then is when the one person finally came to that realization that, hey, I've got to change my mindset, and started working with the person, and instead of focusing on trying to get the other person to do what they wanted and trying to control the situation, when they switched from that to more of a, let me make this work. Let me figure out how to work together. Let me stop thinking my partner isn't putting their worth out there. Let me stop thinking my partner isn't pulling their weight. Let me stop thinking this, and this. Instead, let me start thinking, you know what? This person's out here with me as well. They don't have any more training than I do. They're doing their best. They don't exactly have all the answers. They're just as scared. They're just as hungry. They're just as nervous as I am. It's not their fault. We're in this together. Let's just figure out something. Let's stop trying to listen to talk, as opposed to let's start listening to just understand. And the moment they did that, whether the other person had their own epiphany or not, magically they both immediately started to work together. It was like clockwork. They just immediately started working together. They started kind of both feeling a little bit better. Their spirits started getting lifted up. And then that's usually when they would end up finding some sort of a food source as well. Now, some could argue that even finding the food source was related to that, because prior to that, they weren't able to work together enough to make sure their traps were well built enough or placed enough or whatever it may be to catch it, because they were so worried about trying to prove the other one right, or excuse me, the other one wrong. To whereas when they finally just accepted it for what it is, and they were from a better place, then all of their decisions came from a better place. And they were able to make sure that they put the trap where it needed to be, or check it when it needed to be checked, or tie what needed to be tied, or whatever it may be. And it all just kind of started to flow and to work together. And then next thing you know, their 21 days was up, and they walked out. It was a very amazing thing to watch. And I couldn't help but to see that in my own life, and see it in the lives of those around me when I've had the privilege of talking to them about spirituality. And I mean, even as our last show, there was a person who reached out to me that was dealing with some anger issues about something that took place with their business. Maybe you guys remember from last time or not, but after the show, they sent me probably one of the best messages I've had in a long time, where they were just thanking me for giving them a different perspective. They never thought about that. And it's such an amazing moment when you get to see that happen in other human beings. But what's even more impressive is when you can see that in yourself. Because that, to me, is the last level of enlightenment, if you will, is when you can start to see in yourself how you're causing your own suffering. It's one thing to see it in other people. It's very good to see in other people, and it's very rewarding to understand that. But when you can start to see it in yourself, and you start to realize how you're causing your own trouble and your own problems through your perspective and your way of thinking, and you got to find something else, another way, if you will, of handling it, that's where the magic happens. That's where the enlightenment takes place. So for me, there was a point in my life where, in the situation I'm currently in, there is no me. It would have been, this idiot doesn't know what he's doing. I can't believe this. And there would have been, hell to pay, basically. When I see this person on Thursday, it wouldn't go very well. Not to mention the days leading up to that. I would have been horrible to everybody around me, friends, family, doesn't matter. The gas station attendant, I would have been horrible, because I would have been holding on to this anger because I'm so right, and I'm so, and I just know that this person's an idiot, and they got it out for me, and I'm going to give it back to them because nobody does that to me, and all these other things. But I would have been miserable. and it would have sucked. And it would have made everything in my life worse. It would have made my health worse because all that stress creates cortisol, and all these other things would have happened. All my decision making would have come from that angst, and everything around it would have suffered. And so for me, that is where I've kind of, ascended to, if you will, is application. Once again, application matters, man. You can learn everything you want to learn. It doesn't matter. Read as many books as you want. Listen to me. If you don't know how to apply it, it all means absolutely nothing. It's completely worthless. And so that's what today is trying to help you guys understand how to apply some of this stuff. By no means am I done sharing, the techniques and the tools and answering questions and offering advice and things of that nature. But I just wanted to take a moment out today because I do feel that people are dealing with similar situations. I know for a fact there's a few people dealing with exact situations, but there's millions of people out there dealing with similar situations in the sense that there's something that they feel is maybe out of their control, that's bothering them, that's causing them frustration, that's making them upset and angry, and that is affecting their peace. And because their peace is affected, they're affecting the peace of others around them. They're stuck in this perpetual cycle now of every time they turn around, there's something else happening, and there's something else happening. Now this is happening. And why is this happening to me? And all these other things are taking place. And a lot of that has to do with their perspective. And briefly, that's kind of what I was going to talk about today originally, and I'll get to it at some point in future shows. But essentially that right there is what causes all these quote-unquote new years to be old years. I don't know how many people I've met in my life, and myself included at times, that says, hey, it's a new year, new me, right? We hear that all the time. And the problem is we go through this new year, new me with all these great intentions. And then at a certain point within a year, if we decide to look back and see what has actually transpired, we start to realize it's the exact same cycle that's always transpired. And then we start to get upset and frustrated. What's wrong with me? Man, I can't believe I did this again, whatever. And at the end of the day, what we have to realize is it's not the situation around us. There's nothing wrong with you. It's your perspective. It's the fact that you're not applying spirituality to your life. It's the fact that you're not choosing happiness. You're choosing suffering. I know that sounds like a punch to the gut for a lot of people, but that's me. I'm a punch in the gut. You have to understand you're doing it to yourself. And so if you truly want to make this year different than the year before, instead of working on the physical things that you're doing, instead of trying to make more money, instead of trying to find the right spouse, instead of trying to get that new car, which those are all fantastic goals, by the way, but none of them are going to bring you peace. They might bring you joy. They might bring you a pleasure, like momentarily, but you'll be making the same exact New Year's resolutions the following year. So if you're wanting this year to be different, how about you start working on your perspective? How about you start working on what drives you? How about you start, instead of trying to find the right person, work on being the right person? That kind of stuff. And it starts with being teachable. It starts with saying, hey, you know what? Maybe my way isn't working. Maybe my way is not the best way. Maybe it starts with, seeing suffering in people around you. Maybe it starts to see, listen to my story. Maybe you start to see in my story things of yourself that you realize that you've done or you do. Maybe not to the scale. Maybe it's bigger. Maybe it's smaller. But you start to see, wow, I'm guilty of that. And then you look back and like, did it help me? Did it hurt me? Did it make things better? Maybe that's how it starts. Maybe you start just asking some questions. Maybe you start seeking some answers. Maybe you go get a book. But if we don't start to change our perspective, if we don't start to change, this idea that we think is us, it's never going to change. Because if you're still the same person trying to do different things, it's not going to happen. And so what I mean by that is you have to see, now we're going to get complicated. That's why I wasn't going to get into it today. And we only have like a few minutes left anyway. So my point being, though, is you can't take the same mentality. You can't take the same approach. This idea that you call me, which is essentially just a sum of all the experiences you've had in your life from that perspective, and think that same perspective and that same quote-unquote you is going to magically do things different. It doesn't work that way. So if you're wanting things to happen differently, you got to do different things. And so the perspective is what I'm talking about. This mentality of these things are happening to me. This mentality of, I'm right. Oh, I've got to, retaliate, or how dare this person. The biggest thing I hear all the time that drives me absolutely bonkers is this respect thing. Oh, they disrespected me. But stop. It's not about respect. Nobody cares. And what you view as respect, somebody else might not view as respect. Like, get over that stuff, man. We're not 8 years old anymore. So, like, it would be very simple or very easy for me to think that this doctor is being disrespectful to me. And when I go there on Thursday and I try to lay it out there where I feel that he's been negligent and everything else, if he says anything other than, "Oh my God, you're so right, you're amazing," he's being disrespectful. It's not going to happen, guys. I know that when I go in there, he's not going to put his tail between his legs. He's a grown man. He's a doctor. He spent his whole life doing this stuff. He feels that he's very successful. And here's this know-it-all patient coming in. It's never going to happen. And so it'd be very easy for me to set up those expectations. Anything less than that perspective is a failure. Then I'll be here next week talking about how upset I am and how this guy failed me and I'm trying to find somebody else. Instead, I'm trying to go into it and I'm changing my perspective of, you know what? Let me see what this guy says. Let me see what his perspective was. You know, I'm trying to understand that be it right or wrong, he's got a lot of patience. I'm not his only one. You know, he's busy. He may or may not be as well versed as I would like for him to be on this particular subject, but at the same token, this isn't his particular area of training. He's got a certain specialty, and with that specialty, he's got other things, other training. But at the end of the day, that's not his exact focus. And not only that, but he probably doesn't have the time to sit there and research my exact situation because we're all different people. And so all these things I have to keep in mind. Why? Because I choose happiness. I choose that, you know what, I want to keep my peace. Because at the end of the day, I've got 4 kids at the house and a wife. And as much as at least my wife and probably the older kids try to understand what I'm going through and try to care in their own way, they'll never truly understand because they're not living it. And they'll never truly care in the way I need them to care because they're just different human beings. And that's not a bad thing. It just is what it is. And my little ones, they don't understand that daddy's going through certain things or whatever. What they want is they want their dad at the house. They want to feel loved and cared for, and they still need those things. And in order for me to give that to them, it's up to me to stay centered and stay focused no matter what's happening in my life. Because I don't want to look back and think that I let my kids down because I wasn't able to deal with certain things in my life skillfully. And so therefore, I make it a priority for me every day to do my best to handle it as skillfully as I can because I choose happiness. I choose enlightenment. I don't want to be upset. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to do stupid things. And that's also why I surround myself with people that I know at any given moment I can call and vent to when I need to. And I know who to vent what to. I know certain individuals, I will go to them and vent certain things, and certain individuals I'll vent other things to. And that's not on them, that's on me. And so for everybody out there listening, I absolutely want you guys to learn from my particular situation, learn from my moments of both skillfulness and unskillfulness, and realize that for yourself that you too can choose happiness. You too, no matter how bad it is, no matter how how overwhelming or how right you are, or whatever your particular narrative may or may not be, you can still choose happiness, man. It really, it kind of boils down to that. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Shoot, it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, man, is to respond to this skillfully. But at the end of the day, I'm good today. Y'all are talking to somebody who's actually pretty good. I had a couple conversations here on the way here. I'll have the rest of my day, and I'm good. Doesn't mean that there's not things happening. Doesn't mean that I'm not upset by them. It doesn't mean that I'm not frustrated. It just means that I'm good. I'm still good. I'm still alive. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to continue to work. I'm going to continue to find a solution. And until then, I'm going to try to keep on keeping on. And that doesn't make me better than anybody else, but it does give me peace. And for those of you listening, you don't have to handle things that way. By all means, you can choose to handle it however which way you want. But I will say this though: if you want peace, if that's something that sounds good to you, then you might want to rethink the way you're approaching it if it's not currently giving you peace. So, on that note, I think that's pretty much all I got. Without starting to get into some more of the complicated things that I was originally going to go to, and y'all can thank the producer over here, Dope Doctor, for being the guy who says, you know what, just throw it out the window. Which is, I guess, I'm better at anyways, to be honest with you. I've never been that guy that can just read off a script. So, I digress. I will get to the right understanding. I was supposed to talk about the right understanding and dependent origination. So, by all means, that's a good Google term. go out and Google dependent origination, but do it with a grain of salt because there's going to be a lot of complicated stuff with it. I do my best to try to break it down as simply as I can, but regardless, I hope you got something out of it today. I think that's it, guys. So in the meantime, do better.